Hello, hello, hello. I am Nikia, the founder of BookTini, and today we are here to talk about our first impression of our current read for January. It is Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby, and we're going to talk about the first 50 pages of the book today. This is chapters 1 through 8, and I'm waiting for my co-host to join me, Free. She is on our national book board, and she's the one that really pushed for this book to be selected for our January read. And I also pushed for it because I love S.A. Cosby's writing. So I'm just waiting for Free to join us so we can begin. Hold on 1 second. There she is. I can't hear you.
Oh
What's
no.
going
Now?
Okay, now I can. Now I can. Now I can.
Okay.
Okay. So Free is. Oh, where'd you go? So it looks like we might be having technical difficulties because she just disappeared on me. So we'll give her a few more minutes to work it out.
It kicked me out. It liked me.
Okay, so let's go ahead and dive on in. Again, we're going to talk about Razorblade Tears, which is our January selection. Our theme for January is always recent release, and recent release basically just means something that was released the prior year that had a lot of good ratings and people really enjoyed. So we've heard a lot of great things about Razorblade Tears. It was released in 2021, and it's already been optioned for to become a movie. We don't know if it'll be streaming or in theaters, but it's already, soaring. And so far, like I said, we read the first 50 pages and it is really good. It's a thriller. So we're going to talk about what happened in the book and then how we felt about what happened in the book. Like I said, Free was one of the people who nominated this book to be selected for us to read. And I didn't nominate it, but I pushed for it to be selected because I read S.A. Cosby's previous book, Blacktop Wasteland, and it was amazing. It was one of the few books that got 5 stars from me that I read last year. So I was very excited to read his next book, and I've heard a lot of great things about it. And so far, it's holding up to what people have said. So we're going to talk about what is happening in these first 50 pages. Go ahead, Free.
Uh, okay. First, I want to start off by saying how difficult it was for me to only read these first 8 chapters. Okay.
Yeah.
I got to the end of chapter 8 and I was like, no, 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 no. I felt oh, no, 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 no. So I went back and read it again so that I wouldn't be tempted. But okay, I'm gonna give you guys a recap for those of you who may not have started this book. There are two fathers, one white, one black. The setting is Virginia, right? Present day Virginia. Um, these two fathers they each have a son. And the sons were gay and married. And both of the fathers had issues with the sons being gay, their sexuality, and they had issues with them growing up. Both of the fathers seemed to be very hyper masculine. Both had instance, were violent, men. That's how they read, right? They're very violent, and they don't understand, or they didn't understand their son's sexuality. Both of the sons were murdered, and so now the two fathers
Together.
together.
They were murdered together. They both
Yeah,
were killed together. Yeah.
right. Same time. Um, and the fathers now come together to, it seems like, avenge their son's death. One father, the black father, was hesitant at first. He's changed his life. He's, on the narrow. He owns his own business now. And it seems like, once he was released from prison, he made a very valiant effort to stay on the right path.
Right.
And the other father is the one who came to him and is like, let's do something about this. The police, they're not taking this seriously. Let's go ahead and, let's handle this on our own. And the black father, his name is Ike, at first he's like, I'm gonna need you to back up out my life. It's not what I'm trying to do. And then the son's grave is vandalized, and it pisses him off. And now he's like, look, this is what we need to do. And I mean, it kind of, that portion of the story kind of stops there. They get together and they're like, all right, let's go ahead and let's see where we can start. The one son, the black son, was a journalist. So it's seeming like he was involved in a big story, right? We get this little tidbit of information about this woman that was killed. It seems like she was connected to him as a reporter. So maybe they were doing a story together. You didn't
You
get
went
that?
past the 50. You went past the 50 pages.
No, I didn't. It
What
said
woman that was killed?
we were supposed to go chapters 1 through 8.
I didn't see nothing about no woman that was killed. I know that somebody is searching for a woman.
Did I
There's
say
a chapter where
that's not
I
what I
think you
meant?
went past the movie.
That's not what I meant. What I meant was they want to kill her. That's what I meant.
Okay.
I spoke.
I'm like, what are you doing? Okay, no spoilers past age 50. I just want to.
They want to kill her. They're looking for her. Okay.
Somebody named Grayson gets a call. This is in the middle of the 50 pages. Somebody named Grayson. We have no idea who this person is.
At
He
all.
gets a phone call, and there's a mysterious person on the other end saying, "You handled it for us, but there's one person
Random
that something happened,
right.
and they have found this person, and that person needs to be dead, basically."
You
And
know
he's
what
like, "Nobody."
part? That part,
Huh?
it was very short. What excited me about that part was it reminded me of the TV show Sons of Anarchy, because he was getting
Mhm.
on his motorcycle. The guy on the
Yeah,
other end of the phone who was talking about, the job killing this girl, mentioned his club, and I was like, is this a motorcycle club? Like,
yeah, I was thinking that too.
what's
Or a
going
club
on?
of killers. What's going on?
Right, like you've contracted them to kill this woman. I'm like, okay, it's about to get really, really
But
good.
it sounds like whoever this woman is was like a witness to something that happened. So
So
they're like, everybody who may be able to go to the police about it needs to be dead. So the guy that's receiving the call is like, nobody can find her. She's nothing to be worried. Like, let's not worry about her. And they keep referring to her as a whore. So apparently maybe she was a prostitute or something like that. But the guy that's receiving the call is basically like, she's nothing to be worried about. Let's forget about her. But the guy giving the call is like, no,
right,
I've gotten this far. I have
right,
not gotten this far by letting people live, basically.
right. Always make me feel like that guy is somebody very important, right? Like he's gonna
Yeah.
pop up, he's gonna be the mayor or something. Not the mayor, but he's gonna be somebody very important with a lot of money, and he's into some stuff that he ain't supposed to be into.
He's like, we paid you to handle this. Now handle it.
Right. And
And we don't, like, literally this comes out of nowhere. So we don't know how this fits into the story at all, because first we have these two fathers who are, they're basically grieving their sons, and they have a lot of regret because they did not approve of their son's lifestyle at all. Their sons were recently married. It doesn't seem like either of them went to the wedding, or if they did, they were there for a very short time.
right.
And the white father, Buddy Lee, he's the one that kind of starts this journey of them going out to find who killed their sons. And he starts the journey at the funeral when they're at the burial site, when the family has time to like wait until the caskets are lowered.
Mm-hmm.
And Buddy is there. He wants some time alone with his son. I'm not Buddy. Ike is the black father. He's there. He wants some time alone with the son. And Buddy Lee comes out of nowhere like, how do you feel about this? What, basically saying he has a few regrets about how he handled his son, and there's no way to change that at this point. And Buddy, Ike is like, why are you talking to me? So they didn't have a relationship at all, because they didn't really approve of their son's lifestyle. So they didn't feel the need, I guess, to get to know each other. And Buddy also says that his son was ashamed of him as well. There's a description that says that on Buddy's side, who was the white side, his son was named Derek, that they were, um, it's something that basically lets you know that they're white trash or rednecks. They're considered rednecks and white trash.
They had rednecks with blue collars.
Blue collars, yeah. And
Yeah.
so that gives you an idea of that side of the story. And then the black father, who is Ike, and Isaiah is his son, they're kind of considered not rags to riches, but because Ike, he was in the pen for 15 years, right? When he got out, his son was a teenager, so he wasn't really there for his son at all. And then he finds out his son is gay, so he has an issue with it.
Right.
You know, he doesn't really approve of him. The last time they spoke before he died was a very volatile conversation,
Right.
right?
Right.
And he definitely has regrets about it because his whole thing about getting out of the pen was like, I'm never going to do that again to my family. So
Right.
I'm going to be straight and narrow. He creates this lawn maintenance company, and they're able to live a nice life, not wealthy, but they're not hurting for anything.
Right.
And his son is able to go to college, and he's doing well, and then he gets killed. And Buddy has regrets about how he wasn't able to make it up with his son before he was killed. It looks like the police aren't getting any headway on this murder. It sounds like a very brutal murder because this book is very very gory when it comes to descriptions.
Yeah.
So you know that it was a brutal killing.
Yeah, because Ike especially mentioned that his son Isaiah, one, it had to be a closed casket funeral, because he said the mortician could not put his son's face back together. And the other son, they had to identify him with the top of his head blacked out. Obviously, his head
very sad.
Still execution style.
Yeah. In the middle, it sounded like it was in the middle of the day or something, in the middle of the street somewhere. Somebody just came up on them, not only shot them, but then it stood over them after they had already shot them and made sure they were dead. So this wasn't like a random situation. It wasn't like a wrong place at the wrong time. It was like, we want to kill you, and we made sure it happened. Right. So the fathers get information from the police. It looks like whoever is in their son's lives do not want to speak to the police about anything. Not because they were part of it, but because people don't trust the police, right? So Buddy Lee, surprisingly, because he's a drunk, he has this idea that's like, they're not going to talk to the police, but they'll talk to us because we're their dads and we're regular people, right? And Ike is like, why are you talking to me? Like Ike has this thing where I don't want anything to do with you. Let me grieve my son's death, and deal with it myself with my wife. They also have the sons had a daughter, and his wife was named the caretaker of their daughter. So they have to raise the daughter now. She's a little kid. It sounds like she's a toddler. They didn't give her age.
Yeah, I think she's
very young. Yeah. So then somebody vandalizes their graves, which was really terrible. Like, how do you? It was really upsetting to read how they vandalized it, because they not only vandalized the tombstone but the grass as well. So these people were clearly trying to make a statement about it. Right. And when Ike sees it, he's like, this had to be done on purpose because nobody knew. It's not like their sons were famous or anything. Right. So how would they know that they were gay? It was clearly a hate crime.
Right. Because the way that they vandalized the tombstones, was with very homophobic slurs, racial slurs as well. So, he was right. Like, you can't just walk up to a grave and know that, okay, the people in this grave are either black or white or, homosexual or not. So it was very pointed in the vandalism. And I think that's probably the moment where he started to really question. I think he knew initially, but I think that was the moment he really put it in his head that this was not a random act, the murder of these two men, right? I think he felt like there's something really going on here. Not only were they murdered viciously, but he mentions that he feels like it was a professional job, right? He lived in the life. And so I think this is where he's like, no, something deeper is going on here.
Right, right,
And
right.
he finally decides to go to the other father and take him up on his offer.
Another thing that I wanted to mention too is that Ike said he made this vow to be a good guy after he got out of the pen,
Mhm.
specifically because he felt like if he started again, he would not be able to stop. So
Right,
he's one of those people. He
right.
was like, there's a line that says he wasn't afraid to spill blood. He was afraid he wouldn't be able to stop. And so that gives you an idea of the kind of anger he might have and also the kind of lifestyle he lived before he went into the pen,
Right.
right? Buddy Lee notices that Ike has a tattoo of a lion on his hand, and that signifies whatever association he had when he was in prison. So
Mhm.
Buddy Lee is like, I know you a killer, bruh. So let's mount up to,
Right. So
to avenge our son's death. And at
he
first I was like, nah.
Yeah, okay. So that's so funny that you mentioned the tattoo and mentioned that when Buddy Lee sees it, because I feel like at the grave when he sees that tattoo is when he started to think out this whole idea of we're going to avenge our son's death, because he
Mhm.
looked at the guy and he's like, oh, okay, I know who you are. I know what you about. You didn't definitely got some bodies on you. Otherwise,
Mhm.
have those tattoos.
Right.
So, I'm not scared. So maybe we can link up. And I'm like, oh, see, I will tell you this though. I don't trust Buddy Lee. I don't trust him.
Hmm.
Not because I think he has any ulterior motives, obviously, right? He wants to avenge his son's death. But he's a drunk.
He's a fuck up
He's
also.
he is. And I'm a point in this story where he fucks up. We don't know
Yeah.
yet. But
I'm waiting
I
for
think
it.
it's coming. I definitely think it's coming. Especially
Yeah.
the part where when Ike finally agrees, right? When they sit down and meet,
Mhm.
Ike finally agrees to Buddy Lee to go ahead on the mission, avenge these deaths. He
Yeah.
asked, like, I will, and you put this quote, right, in one of the posts, I will crawl on my hands and knees through glass to get to these people who killed my son. Like,
I'm ready to bleed.
are you willing to do that? And Buddy Lee
Hmm.
looks up in the sky and takes a minute. And he watching the clouds. He describes the shapes of the clouds like he took a minute and then answered,
Hmm.
absolutely. I was like, I don't trust you. No.
See, I that one made me feel like he was like, finally, we can do this. That's what I thought. I didn't think that he hesitated because he was hesitating because he doesn't want to kill anybody. I thought that he was just like, finally. And now the impact of it hit him like, okay, we really about to do this. Because he said absolutely,
Right.
like,
I just
but I do feel you about not trusting him because I
yeah,
feel like his alcoholism is gonna lead to them messing up. Some kind of issue is gonna happen and mess up everything. So that is what I'm worried about. Buddy Lee, like I said, he's a fucker.
right.
He lost his job. He lives in a trailer. It sounds like he doesn't really do anything other than get beer, drink it all day, go to sleep, wake up, and
Right.
do the same thing again.
Whole
So,
20.
so to link up to find somebody and kill them with somebody like that is kind of
Yeah.
you just you don't know what's gonna happen.
Don't match his actions to me. You didn't pull down the whole 24 pack of beer and then cussed out your landlord and basically told him you wasn't paying the rent. I'm not
But
I'm
no, that landlord came to him on the day of his son's
but
funeral.
don't get me wrong, the landlord was trifling. He deserved his ass beat. But the flip side of that was Buddy Lee. You ain't been paying your rent.
No, he said he's only been late a few times. He didn't say, and the rent was due that day,
No,
right?
it was
He said,
late.
I know you've been late a few. I thought he
It,
said it was due that day.
it was
But
late that
anyway, you don't come to somebody the day their son was buried and be like, I'm gonna kick you out if you don't pay your rent. Like, wait till tomorrow.
you
I mean,
don't.
I just feel like he was doing too much.
You don't. And you're right. The dude was wrong. He still told me that he
I'm trying to give him the benefit of the doubt because he did just lose a son. And I mean, reading these men and their grief and how they handled it it's really sad.
it
You
is.
know what I mean? And you think about like how realistic this possibly is. Like both of these men are very, very masculine. Um, they talk about how Ike, when he got out of prison, his son was already a teenager, and the only way that they were able to really connect was through boxing. And they had a shed in the back of the house. They would box together. But when Ike wanted Isaiah to really fight, because he felt like he would make a good boxer.
Mm-hmm.
Isaiah was like, I'm not like you. I don't want to hurt people,
Right.
and like that kind of, I was like, dang, like, as a parent, how does that make you feel when your son kind of, it's like, I don't want to be like you,
Right.
you know what I mean? And then they grow up and they're really not like you at all in a way that you actually feel like is terrible. You
Right.
know what I mean? Then you treat them like that, like they aren't, they can't be their own person, and then they
Right.
die.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's a really rough thing to have to deal with.
It is. It is. Because then in their death, now you're having to contend with the fact that not only did you, um, have this strained relationship, right, with someone who that's your child, right? Different thing than a friend or someone else. This is your child that you had a strained relationship with. And at one point in time, it seems like, okay, I knew, I'd messed up some things, right, between us. I went to prison. We didn't have a relationship. It felt like that was his point in trying to have a relationship with his son, right? He was attempting to connect. The
Yeah.
way they that was through the boxing. But to know that the only way you probably felt like you could connect with your child is now like, I don't want to do this anymore with you, right? Because now I'm associating this action with being like you. And I
Mm-hmm.
can't do this anymore. We can't
Right.
even have this moment because of that. It's like that's got to be hurtful. And to know that all this time, it's probably been what it was 10, 12 years, right?
Mm-hmm.
From that moment when the son decided, no, I can't do this with you anymore. It's like you think that you're going to have time. You think that you're going to be able
Yeah.
to make it right eventually. And
And he said
eventually,
that, like he thought one day Isaiah would be like, after a minute, he'll realize this is me and he'll accept it. And
right,
then after a minute, Ike will be like, there's nothing I can do about it, so I need to embrace my son. But they never got to that point,
right,
you know.
right.
And I do want to bring up the scene at the after the funeral. So they give a scene at the funeral where the preacher
Oh,
that was I guess he was brought on by Ike's mother, Maya. He does this thing during the funeral where he talks about abomination and sin.
yeah,
And that's pretty terrible to come to somebody's funeral and down talk them and basically say they're, don't be like these people that are being buried. All their friends are most likely LGBTQIA, and
right.
you're saying that while they're mourning their friend. And so this comes out of nowhere where Ike sees the pastor in the parking lot, stops the car, acts like he's saying thank you, grabs his hand, and it's basically like,
And
why
crush,
would you do that?
right.
And he crushes this man.
Yeah,
And it comes out of nowhere the way, like the scene is so, it just had my heart beating because it's like, even though he did not do what he should have done when his son was alive, it really hit me in my heart that he was like, you're not going to disrespect my son. This is the last time anybody is going to disrespect my son is when they were killed, basically. So
yeah,
he's already kind of in his Papa Bear mode, you
right,
know what I mean? And all it took was somebody to, well, I don't want to say all it took, but it took that other incident with the vandalism at the gravesite for him to really be like, okay, let's do something about this. But I thought that was really powerful where he was like checking the preacher, you
right.
know,
Like, I mean, one, it's a preacher. So, to step to
right,
a person of God in that type of way is already like, oh, you both, right? But I mean,
right,
I if that was my father, I would expect that. You know what I mean? I would
right,
want them to have my back that way. But
right.
since you brought that scene up, I did want to bring up something that I thought was really interesting and certain dynamics. The mom, right, after seeing that, Ike's mom was like, basically let him go. And they get in the car and he's like, how dare he disrespect my son? And she's like, but you was doing that your whole life, like his whole life,
Right. Where was
right?
that
Like,
energy when he was alive?
yeah, like how dare you now want to defend him in his death? But while he was alive, you didn't treat him with love and respect about who he was. And where before he finally decides he's going to go with Buddy Lee and avenge their deaths, he has this conversation with Maya at home, like, I can tell something's wrong, what's up? And he tells her finally about the conversation where Buddy Lee initially comes to him, and she has no words, right? Like,
she doesn't project.
Right. She has come to him and had, these smart ass comments. Like, it seems like their relationship is also a little strained ever since he went to prison.
A lot strained. Not even a little.
But even though he's changed his life, she's still like, you're still, I still know the person inside of you. I still know who you are. Right. And there's something about it where she still doesn't necessarily like or appreciate or accept, right? Like, who he is. They haven't been able to move past him going to prison. And so when they have this conversation about, the other father wanting him to come along on this, avenge journey, the fact that she doesn't say anything, right? She doesn't say, that's not your role, let the police handle it. She doesn't say, that's my child, go ahead and do it. She just leaves it open. She doesn't even address it.
I think he was waiting for her to say, don't do that. And
Absolutely.
because she didn't, he was like, wait a minute, am I handling this correctly?
Right.
Like, I think that's...
Absolutely. It left the door open for him, because he's like, you mentioned it before, he made that promise to her and the son that he wouldn't step back into that lifestyle. And now,
this is not the time to be ethical. I feel like that's how she feels. Like, my baby is gone.
Right.
This is not the time to be ethical and be a good guy. My baby is gone. I think that's what's in her head, but she doesn't want to say it to him. So she's like,
verbalize, for him to do it. She's not gonna, what's the word? She's not gonna encourage him to do it.
Or give information.
Right. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Like, obviously there's been this tension, right, for this entire time. And now, I mean, I get the circumstances, but now you're willing for him to step back into that life and become that man again. Willing for him to possibly go back to jail in order to avenge your son, right? Like,
and I understand.
That be difficult to look at the person you're supposed to be with, right? That you're married to, and say, hey.
Street justice. I mean, I'm not opposed to street justice. I know there are certain ways that things need to be handled, but like they said, nobody was talking to the police. The case went inactive after 2 months, so they clearly weren't trying to do more. So it's like, what do? Do you let people get away from killing your family? Or do you say, mount up? Right. So they've decided to mount up. And we end where we stopped reading right when they decide to go to Isaiah's job. He's a journalist for a gay, I don't know if it was a website, newspaper, publication, basically.
Right.
And he had received a death threat. They go to the newspaper to see what that was about. They know who sent it. And they speak to this woman who's a managing editor who is a Black lesbian, who's like, she identified with ISIS. Her father also disowned her. Mm-hmm. And she doesn't really feel like that the death threat he received had carried any weight, because it was sent by some people who are like extremists, who are also gay, but they feel like in order for progress, we need to basically by any means necessary get stuff done. But she feels like they're like suburban hipster people who are just all about talk. Like, they've never really done anything of importance. So let's not really put any weight behind this death threat. It's probably somebody else that did this. And so that's where we leave off. I'm very, 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 very excited to see what else happens with this, because the dynamic between the fathers is really interesting. Isaiah, Ike is still not really tripping off Buddy Lee. He's like, let's get these people for our son. But I don't really want to talk to you. And Buddy Lee is like racist in a way, but he doesn't, he says very inappropriate things like you people and stuff like that. He's the type to be like, I have a Black friend, but not really.
He's the type of racist that doesn't recognize he's racist.
And he's not trying to be racist. He just, probably grew up in a very racist environment and doesn't realize how ridiculous he sounds. And
Right.
Ike has no space for that in his life.
Right.
He's like, shut the hell up and let's handle it. And
Oh,
he's
he
already a few times said he was gonna knock him out or
did.
slap
Right.
him.
He's like,
Get
if you
it?
else right, look, I'm a chin check your ass. This is what we gonna.
He already said-
Yeah, no, it's coming. And I'm like, you gotta let them know. Like sometimes you have to put it to people very, very plain. Like that conversation they had in the car when Buddy Lee said something that was pretty racist, right? He said you people, and he had to explain to him, like, look, this is what I hear when you say you people, right? And he's like, he goes, Buddy, does the white guy thing, or who doesn't
You're
recognize.
better off than me. You
I
have
would
more privilege than me.
you got a business, you got a nice house. I would trade places with you any day. And he's like, would you really? Would you really trade places when you get pulled over 4 or 5 times a month? When the white ladies clutch their purses when you walking down the street, right? When like all of these things that I have to go through as a black man, would you really trade places with me? And he had nothing, right? He had nothing because in
Nothing.
reality, it's not the truth. So that dynamic between the two of them, right? Like there's obviously this line where they differ, right? They have all of these similarities, but there's this very clear line of how they're different and how they come from very different worlds and how they've experienced very different lives. Although, both of them are violent, both of them have been to prison, both of them have the same type of family dynamics where, they're not cool with their family necessarily for whatever reasons. They've gone through the same things, but they don't have the same lives.
Right.
And he views it as the same, whereas Ike, the black man, is like, it's not at all the same, right? And I'm gonna know. I like
Right.
that. I like that about this author as well, that he's
Yes.
very clear about pointing out where people are similar and where they excuse me, where they can identify with each other, but also pointing out, he's very good at pointing out how people are very, very different and how they
Mm-hmm.
experience different things because of who they are. He does a really good job of that.
Yeah.
You need to
I,
teach a
I, he does. Like I want to say I love how he writes black men. In both this book and Black Top Wasteland, his main characters are typically men who had led very terrible, violent lives, and then they had families and were like, I don't want to do this anymore because I want to make sure my family's safe and I want to make sure I'm here for them as well. And that uh, is a great thing to see, but they do have to go back into the life to kind of avenge or make sure their family continues to be safe. And I like that as well.
right,
You know what I mean? So
right.
and I love how
But
he is, huh?
I'm like, you got to do what you got to do sometimes, and it's not always
Yeah,
a decision on whether or not you
black and white.
narrow. Sometimes you got to get your hands dirty and able in order to keep your family safe.
Yeah.
It's not cut and dry like that sometimes.
And I'm really excited to see the different definitions of masculinity that are going to come through in this book because, like we said, the fathers are very, very masculine,
Hmm.
like up here, top
Right.
tier. And then you have the sons who they like when they are meeting with the managing editor of where Isaiah works. They're talking about how she's a lesbian and she was a good basketball player
Hmm.
and Isaiah was as well. And Ike is just like, that was just really surprising. And she's like, why? Just because he's gay, you think he's supposed to just knit
Right.
all day? And it makes sense. Like, why do you think that he would not be able to play basketball just because he's gay? So I feel like S.A. Cosby is like basically trying to show through this very um, somewhat emotional book, but also gory and, and thrilling, suspenseful book. Like,
Mhm.
our stereotypes don't necessarily
Yeah.
work all the time.
Right. He's trying to take it down. Absolutely. Because the fathers only understand one level of masculinity, right? And
Right.
they don't get that just because it doesn't look like you doesn't mean that your sons are not still masculine. Being gay does not make them feminine at all, right? And it's like I didn't understand from the little bit we've already read how, I mean, I did understand, but how, at least Ike, the black father, didn't understand how his son could still be masculine through what he viewed as
Right.
masculine, right? Your son was
Right.
very at boxing. He was very good at playing basketball. Those are stereotypes, right? And we shouldn't view them that way, but that's how you viewed masculinity. Those things
Right.
seem to be very masculine things. Your son was good at it. How you viewed him as less than masculine is beyond me.
Right.
If that was your, it just makes sense. But that's how
That's how
people.
people are.
That is.
Yeah. And
He
he
points
puts it in your face to show you how ridiculous.
exactly right. That about him. He's doing it without it being so in your face, right? He's
Yeah.
telling you how ridiculous this is without saying this is a ridiculous view, right? That's
Right.
through the characters, like I think you need to question yourself a little bit in how you view certain things. And I'm expecting, but I should be hoping that by the end, both of these fathers start to change their views about their sons and about, homosexuality as a whole.
Mhm.
They're going to learn a lot through this process, and they're going to learn a lot of sons, and they're going to have to see them in a very different light by the end. I'm crossing my
Right.
fingers.
Mhm. So Ashley, who is another one of our members who was originally going to be on the live with us, she sent me a tweet from the author where he said, this was in March of last year, about the book. He said, I don't know how people are going to react to Razorblade Tears, but I did my best to tell the truth. Love is love. That's all that matters. And I feel like that sounds like that is what, even though, like I said, this book is violent, there's a lot going on. There's a lot of craziness. We got rednecks. We got black folks who've been in the pen. We got linking up to go out and kill some people. Okay. But as the story is being told, it does really seem like this is all about love. Fathers loving their sons and realizing too late that they were not handling their relationships correctly. And then the lives of their sons together as husband and husband. And I feel like they're going to learn a lot about their lives as they're searching for their killers, and they're going to understand better about, about their lifestyle and how it shouldn't have been that big of a deal.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right. I
So
can't the rest of it. And I see why it's been optioned by Paramount. I can't wait.
I cannot wait. Like, I want to know who is going to be Ike,
Oh,
because the way this man handles people just cracks me up, and I love it. He's very, very like no nonsense and like, get out of my face. Why are you talking?
yeah, man.
I have no idea who could play him now. Somebody like Denzel, but I feel like Denzel would never. Maybe he would. Like, I could see his what's the role that he won the Oscar for? Training Day character in a way.
Mhm.
Um, but I feel like somebody else like that. You know that guy from Waiting to Exhale that Leela was trying through that orange at when when she's on the balcony and he's talking crazy to her from the what is
No,
from Forrest Gump. The guy from
no.
Forrest Gump.
Mm-mm.
He would be great.
I don't know
Yes,
his name. I don't know
I
his
think he
name.
was great
I want
as a
this guy
father.
a little younger. I want him to be a
Think
little,
he should be younger?
just a little bit.
What if he be like 50? Yeah, that guy is probably too old.
Yeah, I think he's in his 60s maybe. I was thinking late 40s. And I think that was an assumption because I feel like him and his wife had their son young.
They may have, because I know they said they started dating when they were like 13, 14.
Right. It didn't say that, but I just felt like they may have a kid younger. And they were like, maybe, 19, 18, something. It's just an assumption.
Yeah, late 40s might be it. I have no idea who would fit this role. It needs to be somebody rugged and big, scary a little bit.
Yeah, they do have to. They do. They do
Jimmy
have.
said Rockman. Jimmy's is in the comments saying Rockman Dunbar. The only reason why I'm saying no is because he is anti-vax. He just got kicked off the last show he was on, so this is not going to work. That's the only.
Yeah, daddy.
What'd you say?
Let me just go ahead and sip my cocktail.
Oh yeah, just so y'all know, we are drinking the cocktail. So the cocktail pair with this book is a Hennessy Hot Toddy. We chose Hennessy because this is a very Hennessy type book. Henna make you sin, maybe
Yeah,
type book.
yeah.
So we have Hennessy tea,
Punch him in the
uh,
gut.
syrup, maple syrup, and what else is in here? Lemon, and it's
Lemon.
delicious.
Yeah. You know,
So
I
yeah,
mine up a little bit, but you know,
you,
I spice mine up a little bit. You know how we're supposed to use the herbal tea? So
uh,
I use apple cinnamon herbal tea,
oh, fancy.
and I did honey instead of maple syrup.
No,
And I have out in stick.
okay, cinnamon stick. So I use yellow. I use lemon because I didn't have herbal and I wasn't about to buy a whole pack of tea, for one. But I have lemon tea in mine, and no cinnamon over here. But yeah, I'm
It's,
feeling it.
I know it was definitely a bit of a pick me up when I took my first sip at like 11:30. It was 5 o'clock somewhere.
Right, right. So your first impression before we leave. What's your first impression?
Amazing. We're going to get off of this live and I'm going back to this book because I'm telling you, over the last few days, it took everything I had not to continue reading past the point where we were supposed to stop. I was like, maybe I won't say anything about what I've read. I knew I couldn't do that because I'd form opinions.
Hmm.
But it was rough not going because it's definitely a book where you just want to keep reading to see what's going to happen. So I
Yeah,
think it's a good one. I do.
I agree. I think this was a great book to start our year off.
Absolutely.
Um, I'm ready to read. I'm ready to discuss it.
Yeah.
It's gonna be lit,
Yeah.
especially with these drinks.
But the other opinions will be from people when we talk about it. I think it's gonna be a
Oh
great.
yeah, great discussion. A lot. It's so much stuff to talk about. It's a lot.
Yeah.
So I mean, this was only supposed to be 15 minutes, and I don't know how long we've been on. So yeah, it's a lot to talk about. And this is only the first eight chapter, 50 pages. So no, it's okay. Like that's what it's the book's fault. It's not ours. So so yeah, go ahead and pick up Razorblade Tears by S.A. Cosby. It's a great book. And go ahead and have your drinks and discussions later this month with your Hennessy Hot Toddy. And we'll see you later. Happy reading.
Bye, y'all.